I cannot tell you guys how frustrating it is to be filming this video right now, because I filmed it yesterday and I left image stabilization on, and unfortunately I watched the footage back and the whole background is going like so. And no one wants to watch that. So we're going again. We're gonna do my home birth experience, which was 10 days ago now. So lots of, I was gonna say coffee, this isn't coffee, this is tea. Anyway, so home birth story. Honestly, I was never the sort of person who would go for a home birth. When you think of a home birth, lots of people think of very spiritual, very magical, beautiful experience. I loved my home birth. It was wonderful, and this is a very positive story. However, magical is not really the word I would use, but that could just be me. I'm quite matter of fact about these things. But anyway, I feel like I'm like the practical person's approach to home birth. And the reason we went with it, in all honesty, is because I've always been really anxious about hospitals. I've been quite nervous of those environments. And when we started doing the hypnobirth courses, and when we started educating ourselves about what birth really was, when we realised that actually, in order for labour to progress, in order for your contractions or your surges to become more powerful and to get the baby here faster, effectively, you need to limit adrenaline and you need to maximize oxytocin, because your body cannot produce oxytocin at the same time as adrenaline. And oxytocin is the pleasure hormone which helps your contractions to progress, helps your muscles to basically build up and then push down, effectively. So the more oxytocin you have, the more of this pleasure hormone you have, the faster your labor is going to be. As soon as you get anxious and adrenaline starts coming in, it stops that production of oxytocin and it slows down your labor. So I knew that the second I went into that hospital, or as soon as I got in the taxi to go to the hospital or whatever we were doing, I knew my adrenaline was going to go through the roof, because I mean, we're talking, sometimes I'll walk into a doctor's surgery and I'll just faint, because I know that there's no reason to be scared of a hospital, but I just can't get past it. I don't know what to say. It's a subconscious reaction to hospital environments that I have no control over. So we were at NCT one day and Hugh just said, look, why don't we try a home birth? And they've been talking that day about home births at NCT and about how low risk they actually are. They say, like, for example, if you have a home birth, you have an increased risk of, I don't know, something going wrong. But actually, lots of those increased risks are only by like 1% or 0.5%. But if you look at the percentages, and I'm sorry I don't have them with me right now, I had them yesterday, but you'll actually see, if you look into the statistics, and I'll try and put some links below, for the women that do go forward with a home birth or plan to have a home birth, there is a significantly reduced risk of intervention, of C-section, of the forceps and all that sort of thing. You're far less likely to need any interventions if you plan for a home birth than you are if you go into a hospital. Now, obviously those figures are slightly skewed because the people who are going for a home birth are very low risk pregnancies anyway. But I do feel that it's really important that we educate more women nowadays to really understand that you are not a patient, you're not sick when you're pregnant, and you're not ill when you go into labour, and it's not a medical procedure, it's completely natural. And I am such a practical person. I'm so not one of the, like, a naturalist person, but it's true, your body's designed to do this. The very fact that the hormone that you need to progress your labour is a pleasure hormone, it's oxytocin. Your body is designed to make birth easier and to help you through it and for it to be fine. Like, women all over the world give birth away from a hospital. It's only in the West, like it's only in like England, Europe, America, that sort of thing, where we actually decide that hospitals are 100% necessary for birth. It's crazy. And also, if anything was to go wrong in a home birth, firstly, you have multiple midwives at your house for the whole time, only focused on you, so they spot issues super early. But you can also just get in an ambulance. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It's like nothing is going to go wrong like that. Often in a hospital environment, when people say, oh, I had an emergency C-section, actually loads of those C-sections aren't technically emergency C-sections. They are something that's been seen happening for like the last 5 hours, and you're now going to have a C-section because your labour isn't progressing, but in actual fact, loads of these issues are seen super early, and if there are any of these indicators, they will just take you into hospital anyway. But to be fair, I mean, my son, his heart rate was slowing and his cord was around his neck twice, and the midwives didn't panic. There was no need to go into a hospital. It was all dealt with and totally fine at home on my sofa. In fact, I even had a 2nd degree tear and they stitched me up on the sofa, and then I got into my own bed and went to sleep. It was wonderful. But I'm skipping to the end of the story before we've even started. So, before we talk about the home birth, just a very quick one on induction. So, I wasn't overdue, I was 39 plus 3, but there was a little bit of a talk of induction because I thought I was getting reduced fetal movements about 2 weeks before baby came, and then a week before. So the hospital said to me, look, you're within your due window, you're over 37 weeks, you might as well get induced. And I was like, whoa there, let's not. There is a hell of a lot of women, especially in the UK, being induced really early nowadays. It's oftentimes, and I love the NHS so much, so nothing that I say during this video is against the NHS, but oftentimes it's completely unnecessary. It's done because it's much easier for them to schedule you in for an induction. It's much cheaper, much more cost effective, much easier on staffing, especially during COVID, than it is for you to go into spontaneous labour and just turn up at a labour ward. As soon as I said to the midwives in the maternity assessment unit that I was planning for a home birth, they suddenly said, oh, okay then, well, let's not induce you, you're fine, the baby's fine, you can go home. What does that tell you? There was no medical reason for me to need an induction, and I know so many women who have been told to have an induction. They have an induction, and then the percentage risk for you then needing interventions because you don't have natural oxytocin, you have synthetic oxytocin. The contractions come on so much faster, it's a lot harder to deal with. You suddenly end up needing an epidural because you feel like you can't cope because it's happening too fast. You're more likely to need a C-section, you're more likely to need medical interventions or forceps, for example. There's so many reasons why inductions are great when they're needed, but in the majority of cases they're not, and there's so much written about that you can find online. I'm not a doctor. Lots of this is opinion, I should probably say, but I have fairly strong opinions on the subject. Anyway, so I said no to intervention, and at 39 plus 3, or 39 plus 2, I went into labour. I was trying to bring on labour for ages because from about 2 weeks before my due date, baby was fully engaged, head down, like he was really, really far down, to the point where I had an ultrasound to do just a sizing check, and they couldn't get to his head because it was so far down, and they had to like write on the notes that they couldn't get to it. So he was ready to come. I was walking 10,000 steps a day, I was trying the spicy food, I was doing the raspberry leaf tea, like everything that at the start of the pregnancy I was like, oh, it's just rubbish, all of those things don't work. I was trying them because at that stage you get desperate. But on the 39 plus 2, I went for a walk in the morning, I did my 10,000 steps, came home, my husband went out to the pet shop, and I just thought, what the hell, I'll try the nipple stimulation because my midwife had recommended it. Got into the shower, did 20 minutes about of nipple stimulation in the shower, just like the rocking motion that they recommend. And I got out the shower, walked into this room to get my underwear, put it on, and before I'd walked back into the bathroom, I was like, oh, I've wet myself. And well, okay, not that uncommon. I'm pregnant after all, and quite heavily pregnant. So I came back in here, got some fresh underwear, put it on, walked back to the bathroom. Before I'd got back into the bathroom, I'd wet myself again. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm not pissing myself this time. Maybe not. So I then just sort of sat on the toilet for a while, just sort of thinking, I think my waters might have gone. So I put a pad on, walked around the house for a little bit, and like I was continuously leaking fluid, like a very clear fluid, little bit tacky, I want to say, almost. Anyway, so I rang the midwife. Actually, no, I think first, I rang the midwife first. She said, yep, sounds like your waters have gone. I'm going to come over and check you, which is the first amazing thing about having a home midwife team. There's only 5 women in our home midwife team from Guy's and St Thomas's in Westminster, and you know all of them. They're wonderful. They're lovely ladies. They're always on call, always available. You're always talking straight to a person. You have all their phone numbers. You're not just ringing a switchboard at the hospital. And she was like, I'm just finishing up what I'm doing at the clinic or wherever she was. I'll be over in half an hour, and I'll just double check that it's waters, check everything's fine, keep all the pads. Could be go time. Great. I was super excited. I was so excited for labour. I was just everything from that moment, because I knew it was all about the oxytocin. It was all about staying happy. I just got into this excited mindset. I put on some dance music. I stayed super positive. I rang my sister. She squealed down the phone. In fact, actually, it was a really funny story. I rang my sister, and her 7-year-old answered, Lily. And I could tell I was on speaker, and I was like, Lily, are you with mummy? And she went, yeah. And I was like, can mummy hear the phone? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, can you tell mummy that Auntie Dee Dee's gone into labour? And I just heard banging from across the room, and my sister was obviously like throwing stuff out of her hands, running across the room to grab the phone. And yeah, there was a fair amount of squealing and excitement. Jenny's my baby sister, but she has 2 kids, and so the whole way through this pregnancy we've both been just very excited for little Blob to arrive. So then I tried to contact my husband. He obviously didn't answer the phone because he'd gone to the pet shop and just wasn't paying attention. So I just spent basically the next hour or so until the midwife arrived just wandering around the house. I made a stack of peanut butter sandwiches. I got changed into something comfy. I put Bohemian Rhapsody on, the Queen movie. I just had to enjoy myself. I took some bump photos in the mirror, so I had some final bump pictures. I was just so excited. And so that happened at 3 o'clock, and then at 3:30 my contractions started, which very much I'd been having labour type symptoms for the last couple of weeks, really bad stomach cramps, but at 3:30 when they really kicked in, that was when people always say you can tell, and I thought that was such bull. It drove me mad when people just kept saying, you'll know when you go into labour, you'll know. I had to eat my words. I did know. They were very much, people talk about a wave, it was definitely a wave. It was almost those stomach cramps that you get get at the start of your period, it was like they were coming and going. That's exactly how I can describe it. It was like a tight knot in my abdomen, and it would start to build and then it would die down, and it would start to build and it would almost like you could twist a knot and then it would go like that, and then it would twist and then it would go like that. And it's so true when they say that between contractions, it's like every other day. Everything's completely normal, and it's so true. Between contractions, you feel nothing. So for the first stage of labour, when your contractions are a good few minutes apart, you can carry on doing whatever you want. I could have gone out for a walk. Like, I didn't in the end. I was walking around the house an awful lot and just tidying up the house, because for some reason I decided I needed to tidy the house before the midwives came. But basically it's a doddle. You can just carry on doing whatever it is that you're doing, which is one of the joys of going into spontaneous labour. You don't have a sudden barrage of really strong labour pains. Anyway, so the midwife came, checked, all good, we're fine. She said, give us a call again. She went home. She said, give us a call again when they are 3 in 3. So it's like 3 contractions every 3 minutes, or 3 in 10 basically. So I had the Freya app, if anyone's had it. It was recommended by the Positive Birthing Company, who is who I used for the hypnobirthing course, which I hugely recommend. It's fantastic. It's about £40. It's an online course, and it basically taught us everything we needed to know about labour, and it all of the techniques and the coping mechanisms and whatever that they gave us completely helped me sail through the whole thing. So I basically spent the whole labour thinking about this traffic light system. So the traffic light system they talk about in the Positive Birthing Company course is that green is like your calm, happy place. Amber is when it's getting a bit, you've got a surge coming in, you can definitely feel something's happening. Red is when you're panicking and all the adrenaline's coming in and you're like cutting off your oxytocin. You never want to get to red. You want to go from green to amber and then back to green again. And I found that by giving myself such a solid, there's nothing wishy-washy about that, you can really understand, okay, getting up to amber, coming back down to green. And I found that through my contractions, I would just I'd go with it, let myself get up to amber, because obviously, the breathing is great. It keeps you calm, and I stayed calm throughout the whole process. I didn't freak out throughout the whole labour. Stayed really calm and within myself a lot. But I did notice the tightness and the pain. I'm not gonna lie, there's pain. You don't really care that much in the moment, but there is definitely pain. And so whenever I got up to the amber, as soon as it would start to tail off and the wave would start to diminish, I straight away thought, right, get to green. And that was the challenge, to bring myself down and to calm myself down and get back to green again. Because then I knew I'd be totally fine, because you can do anything for 60 seconds, which is another thing that I kept thinking whenever it got a little bit tough and I started to think, it's a bit much. Just, you can do anything for 60 seconds, absolutely anything. I just thought of the same, whenever I'm doing a One Rebel gym class or something and I'm on the treadmill, I always just think, it's a 60-second sprint, you can do this, you could absolutely smash it for 60 seconds. I should also say, as these contractions were starting to build, I spent the whole labour, right up until the end, with huge big noise cancelling headphones on my head and walking around the house. I pretty much didn't stop walking for my whole labour. I took my Fitbit off at one point, which I'm really annoyed about, because I would have loved to know how many steps I did. But I knew that if you walk up steps, it helps labour to progress, because it helps baby to wiggle into position. And anything that I could do to help me know that I was progressing the process faster made me feel a lot better. So anything that encouraged pain ridiculously, if it hurt more, I knew it was working more and we were getting closer, which sounds so backwards, but I kept almost just saying out loud, I was like, the more it hurts, the happier I am, the more it's progressing, the better it is. And I think that's what helped me stay in a positive mindset, because by the time the next midwife got there, when I thought I was 3 contractions in 10 minutes, she did an internal examination on my request, because you don't have to accept those, by the way, guys. I just wanted to know how far along I was. I was 6 centimetres. It was fantastic. I was so excited, because I was really coping with it then. At that point, I put the TENS machine on my back. So you should probably use a TENS machine at the start of labour. I didn't know you were supposed to use it super soon, because if it builds with you, it's apparently more effective. I found it really effective anyway. So I used it from when I was on 6 centimetres, which is, it's like little electric impulses, which you stick the pads on your back, there's 4 pads, and you have this little clicky button, and you press the button whenever a contraction or a surge starts, and the electrodes start going like that, and then you press it again, and it just goes back to a normal pulse. And it basically helps distract the brain a little bit, so that you're not thinking about the pain in your abdomen, and you're actually just thinking about the sensation going through your back. I loved this. I think part of it as well is knowing that you're taking control and you're pressing the button at the start of every contraction. It really feels like you're doing something to help yourself. So I would press the button, and as I was getting further and further along, actually, and the contractions were getting a lot stronger, I kept on walking around the house, but I also stamped my feet a lot. I found that stamping my feet helped. Not really hard, but almost like marching with my feet up and down really, really distracted me. That and rocking, and also getting Hugh to push on my back as well, meal, all of these things hugely helped me. Anyway, so an hour after the midwife arrives, I start to really go inside myself. I stop really communicating with Hugh and the midwife, and she can sense there's a bit of a change going on, and she says, you know, I think you seem to be progressing quite quickly, especially for a first-time mum. Not least because this is only a couple of hours after 3 o'clock anyway, when I first started the contractions. So I asked her to do an internal exam again, because I just wanted to know how far I was, and I was 8, nearly 9 centimetres after an hour from being 6 centimetres. So you're supposed to progress about a centimetre an hour. So all of this, and I fully put it down, well, 2 things that I put this down to: my mindset and how positive I was managing to stay, but then also just exercise and fit and healthy. And so the whole way through the pregnancy, I very deliberately, I kept on doing my spin classes. I've got my Peloton bike over here, kept on doing my yoga all the time, walking every day, and walking throughout the labour. I really think it progressed the whole process. It took my mind off things. I wasn't just sat there like tensing up every time a contraction came. I was walking through everything. I was breathing as well, doing the breathing techniques. That really helped. But honestly, I think it's keeping up, keeping mobile, and just helping gravity and nature to take its course rather than getting too het up and worried about what's going to come, what's going to happen. I just took every contraction at a time. It's actually worth saying as well, you really do forget the time that's passing. I had no idea. People say that your brain switches into a new mindset almost, it's like a new channel in your brain that you've not tapped into before, and it's so true. You really don't notice the time passing out. I mean, the labour was about 7 hours. We gave birth in the end at 4:30 in the morning, and I have never stayed up all night. Well, I've stayed up all night before, maybe like twice. I'm such an early sleeper, and I had no inclination that it was 4:30 in the morning. I just straight over my head. So once I was around 8-9 centimetres, the birthing pool was full at this point, and I was starting to notice a bit of a change in myself as well. I was starting to, I don't know if I was really conscious of it, but I'd got very sick at this point. As the contractions started to build, I threw up. I think there was 4 or 5 different instances where I was sick quite a few times throughout the labour. Vomit was something that I was really, really scared of happening during labour because I've got emetophobia, so I'm scared of vomit, other people vomiting, myself vomiting. I basically never vomit in everyday life. It's something that I avoid at all costs and I stop myself from doing. And to be contracting and vomiting at the same time, it's quite an experience, I have to say. I mean, it does distract you from the pain. I feel like I'm saying pain a lot. Please know, guys, that I'm saying pain just to describe the sensation that was happening. I really don't think the contraction pains were that bad. It was, at the time, I remember saying to Hugh, this is a pain like I've never felt. But it was such a productive pain that I didn't cry, for example, during, I quite often cry if I really hurt myself. I'm quite emotional. I wasn't even close to tears. It was you feel like you're running a marathon. So in the same way that when you're running really far and you can feel like your feet hurt or something and you're in pain, but it's productive pain. It's not something that you want to stop for. It's not something that's so bad that you need to just completely stop and keel over and think about. It's something that you know is building towards something. It's a really hard one to describe unless you've been in it, which I know is really horrible for anyone watching this video potentially who's thinking of doing a home birth and is pregnant right now. All I would say is don't be scared of it, because the second you feel scared of it, it will hurt more because you'll tense up. And for me, I think the reason that I didn't find the pain unbearable is because I absolutely gave myself over to that feeling, and I just let it ride through me. As soon as I started to tense up, Hugh would say right up to my headphones so that I could hear him, relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, take a breath. And as soon as I did that, the pain it wasn't an issue anymore, because it's the tensing up. In the hypnobirthing class, they teach you to do something where you hold your hands above your head and tense one arm and don't tense the other one, and you'll find that the tensed arm holding above your head can't stay up as long as the one that's not tensed, because the blood isn't able to circulate as well, and you need to be pumping the oxygen into your muscles so that they can contract, so they can be more productive, so that it can all happen a lot faster and smoother. And as soon as you stop breathing and as soon as you tense up, your muscles can't work as effectively. So just let it all go. Relax, loosey-goosey, walk around the house, you'll be totally fine. So yeah, the vomiting was actually totally fine. For someone who is petrified of vomit to the point where I have to leave the house if someone's being sick, I honestly was fine with it. I found that all my inhibitions disappeared during labour. There was 2 midwives and Hugh, my husband, in the house, and a couple of things that we know Imogen lost all her inhibitions because we had an orange bucket in the living room just in case I threw up, so vomited in there a couple of times. I also found that I needed to poo a lot during labour. Only a little bit, at a time, but a lot. I was just walking around the house pooing, to be completely honest. I did not care about finding the bathroom. I did not care about who saw. It's just what I was doing. So at numerous stages during the labour, either a midwife or my husband had to clean my arse up, because I just didn't care. I honestly didn't care. I was just listening to my music, breathing my way through those contractions and ignoring anything that was going on, which unfortunately now means that there is a little bit of blood on our lovely beige rug in the living room, because I also refused to stay in one spot because I was walking so much. So we have poo, we have a little bit of urine, amniotic fluid, a little bit of blood. I mean, just a lovely cocktail, but I apparently didn't care. And I think that's also one of the great things about home birth, that you can just let go, and that apparently hugely helps in birth. So if you'll notice with animals and mammals, they'll go to a really quiet, dark corner to give birth. You know, horses always give birth in the middle of the night. If you've got a cat or a dog and they've ever given birth at home, you'll find that when you leave the house, they'll go and sit under a bed or something to give birth. It's that idea of wanting to, you don't want to feel self-conscious, you just want to like let it all go and let the labour happen effectively. So home birth is a really great way of doing that, because you're in your own environment. It's usually really dark. I had loads of candles lit. It was wonderful, and it really helped us to get into that, I don't know, that space where I just didn't give one. Like I can't stress that enough. And actually it's been quite nice, because since the birth I haven't really built back up that wall. I don't think. I care a lot less about... I've been with my husband for 10 years now, but I just care less, I think, since the birth. I mean, after your husband's picked poo off your bum, I think you have to care a little bit less. Yeah, we might never have sex again, but you know, you have to care a little bit less. But anyway, so at around the 8-9 centimeters mark, I decided to get in the birthing pool, which I have to say, so we took the electric, the TENS machine off my back, which I was a little bit nervous to do, I've got to be honest, because it had been working so well for me. I didn't want it to come off and then suddenly I couldn't cope, because it had been completely distracting me from the pains. But I got in the pool, we took the TENS machine off, and actually that was such a relief. And we think at that stage, that's when I transitioned. My contractions suddenly died off, they got very far apart, and I got very, very quiet, and I just sort of led my head and rocked for a little while. It's probably about half an hour I was in there, and at this point that's when I asked for the gas and air. I hadn't had anything else up until that point. I'd just been on the TENS machine. So about 9 centimeters we probably were, 9-10 centimeters, I wanted the gas and air. I also really wanted to start pushing, which for some reason, although I knew it was that I wanted to start pushing, I kept just saying I need to poo. I was shouting that a lot, I really need to poo, because I just felt stupid wanting to push so quickly, because I knew I shouldn't be pushing yet. I knew I should wait a little bit, let my body ease into it a little bit more. But the midwife was great. She was just like, go with it, do whatever your body wants to do. And she pretty much, the midwife wasn't talking to me for the majority of the labour. She would come and listen to my stomach every 15 minutes, but she wouldn't talk to me to do that. She would just do it and like let me walk around the house, and she would just follow me. But I'd put on my birthing preferences that I just wanted to do this naturally, leave me on my own. Like Hugh wasn't really talking to me, the midwives weren't really talking to me. Occasionally I would like shout a word or say like, I need some juice, or I need a Nutri-Grain bar, I think I asked for at one point, and then I had a little bite and threw the rest on the floor. Again, didn't care. But I was just in my own head, just pacing effectively for hours on end. So I had this gas and air, and I'd been worried about having the gas and air because I thought it would make me vomit. But at that stage, because I'd already been sick, I just thought, to hell with it, I'll try it. I was so wrong. The gas and air was amazing. It was like another level of just wonderfulness. It really helped. There was a mixture of, I think because I used to be a smoker years ago, and there was part of the comfort of just having something in my mouth. God, this sounds like an innuendo. Something on my mouth to suck in and blow on. It was amazing, and like biting down on it, and like I think part of it wasn't even the gas and air, it was just having something there. But the gas and air also was just magical. I kept my eyes shut, because if I opened my eyes I felt a bit dizzy. So if anyone is a bit worried about sickness, just keep your eyes shut and you'll be totally fine. However, what we did find is that my contractions slowed down, which we think was me transitioning, but then they weren't picking back up again enough while I was in the pool. So the midwife suggested that we get up, and I actually decided to I stood on the outside of the pool, and I put one leg up on the side of the pool so that I was sort of like one leg in the air, one leg down. And I stayed like this for an hour and a half while I basically did the pushing stage of the labour. So the pushing stage was about an hour and a half, and the first hour was progressing quite slowly. They could see the head, and it was, if you don't know, the way that it works is that the head eases down the birth canal, so it will come as you push, and then it will retract and go back in a little bit, and then it will come a little bit further down, and then it will retract a little bit, so that it's just stretching out the passage as it's coming down. We found that it was coming a certain way, at a certain depth, but it wasn't coming enough, and his heart rate started to slow down. So what we did for the final 30 to 40 minutes, which I think at the time I was a little bit miffed about, but you know, we progress, we continue. They took the gas and air off me, and they took the TENS machine off me, and I was basically pain relief free to get this baby out of me. And the reason they did that is because they found that as soon as they took all of the pain relief off me, my pushes got a hell of a lot stronger. I was just focused and it was just happening, and he just moved. So that's kind of how we did it. I was just stood in the living room, one leg up on the birthing pool, one leg down, and we just went for it. And I remember thinking, so I got a 2nd degree tear, which was not ideal, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Unfortunately, sorry if you can hear that, it's my neighbours. Unfortunately, he stuck his elbow out as he was coming down, and he came out very fast. We've got a video of his first 3 minutes, and he just shot out in the end, which was not ideal, because unfortunately that's how rips happen when you don't ease. Like, ideally the head would come out, and then you'd pause, you'd breathe, you'd let him sit there, and then the rest you'd push out afterwards. But unfortunately, the way I was stood up, and just because his elbow got and it just ripped, he all came. But in the moment, it was fine. I remember thinking, as he was getting towards the end and I was pushing the head out, those people always talk about the ring of fire and the burning, and yeah, it's a burning, but actually I preferred that pain than the contraction pain, because it was such a productive pain. Like, you could feel his head moving and coming down. I could feel it happening. I knew I was about to meet him. And I just, again, that mindset of this pain is good, this pain means, this feeling means that something is happening, that he's coming, that it's progressing, that it's happening. And I also knew that his heart rate was slowing, so we did have to get him out. There was no, I didn't even let into my brain that I couldn't not progress, And also I feel like you can attack a lot more when you're in your own environment and it's your own space. And so I put on my, I had 3 birth playlists, a dancing playlist, an emotional birth playlist, and a Get Your Shit Together Imogen playlist. So I put on my Get Your Shit Together playlist, and we just went for it. Whenever a contraction came, the midwife was like, you just go for it, do it, like, push, you can absolutely do this. And like, everybody was like cheering me on in the room. It was amazing. And he just came. And I watched this video back, and so actually, yeah, before I move on that, just if anybody's worried about tearing, really don't. The worst bit about tearing is the recovery afterwards. That has sucked. I'm not gonna lie, that has sucked. But in the moment when your baby's being born, it's fine. Like, I can feel, if I think about it now, I could probably think about what it felt like, and it's not pleasant to think about. But there are so many different emotions and feelings going on in that moment. Again, I'm not going to use the magical feeling, because I might look back on it and think it was magical. Oh, I can hear him crying. Oh. Okay, I'm now not sure where we were. He was trying to change me and we needed clothes. Yeah, so he came out of me, and on this video, they passed him up between my legs, so I was still stood up, and the sofa was sort of to the side of me, so the midwife sort of leant me back, and I put him on my chest, and I just put my eyes up in the air, and I went, oh, you have no idea what a relief that is. And so people say, how did you feel when he was born? And I think I felt relieved. That's the moment that I think was magical. Like, the experience of having a home birth was honestly better than I could have ever imagined birth would be. It was in no way traumatic. It was in no way stressful. It was fast, wonderful. It was great, honestly. But I wouldn't call it magical, because it's still difficult. It's still, like, for me, it's like the feeling that you get when you've done a marathon or a really big exercise challenge, and you've really pushed yourself and you feel empowered, you feel proud, you're like, I achieved this. But that feeling when he was first on my chest was magical. And I looked across at Hugh, and he was crying, and we did delayed cord clamping. I also had the injection to bring the placenta out, so I'd put on my birth preferences that I didn't want the injection. However, at that stage, I just didn't care. I just wanted my baby. So I got them to do the injection. The placenta took a little while. It had a very thin cord on it, he had the cord around his neck twice, by the way, which I was really worried about happening, but actually they just unwrapped the cord and he cried and was fine. So I forget about it. That's how much of a non-thing it was. But also, just so you're aware, in a home birth environment, they do also set up a whole table as soon as they arrive with resuscitation equipment, so that if there was an issue with the baby, they could fix it straight away. after the placenta had come out, and she, like, the midwife just basically did it for me. I don't even remember it coming out. I just sat back with my baby. I occasionally pushed, but basically it was a non-issue. It came out in 10-20 minutes. But then I needed to have my stitches done. So I had a 2nd degree tear, which means it went through my skin and my muscles. So I needed to give baby over to Hugh at that point, and this is the part of the labour where I got really emotional. I think the adrenaline and all of the excitement just left me. I was shaking quite a lot. I was really cold. I also just didn't have my baby in my arms anymore. I've been doing skin to skin, like all the oxytocin flooding through me. I'd been breastfeeding, and then I had to give him away to do my stitches. I dealt with this, I think, better than I would have done in a hospital, because again, I was led on my sofa in my own living room, but also because I got to use the gas and air. So I cried, I think, for a good few minutes before she started, because I was really scared. I don't know why I wasn't scared of the labour, but I was scared of the stitches. But then they gave me 3 different local anaesthetic, just an injection into your vagina, which actually was totally fine. That hurt so much less than I thought. In fact, I think it hurt less than my COVID jab, but that could have also been the gas and air. And then I just sucked on the gas and air for about 40 minutes to an hour. The stitches took a while, but again, I put my headphones in, I focused on the music. I'm pretty sure I was humming or singing out loud to distract myself. And genuinely, it's been the recovery that's been the hardest from those stitches. So I've pooing, for example, after doing it so much during labour, couldn't do it for a good few days after birth. One of my stitches came loose, or the top bit of the stitches came loose, which wasn't ideal. So I have been given lactulose, which is a breastfeeding friendly laxative, as well as suppositories, which are like the little up the bum, glycerin suppositories for basically laxatives that go up your bum, and then also ibuprofen and paracetamol, which is just useless for pain relief. But c'est la vie, this is what we have. So taking that every day, for someone who doesn't really take a lot of medicine, I haven't really enjoyed that bit of the process. So we're 10 days now, and the stitches are so much more bearable now. I'm still showering about 4 or 5 times a day because of the risk of infection. Obviously, with it being down there, you have to keep the area very clean, and if it was to get infected, that would be awful. I have stitches going the whole way down the back, so it wasn't an episiotomy, it wasn't a full like 4th degree or 3rd degree, but because it was 2nd degree, it was all the muscle and the skin pretty much around the perineum and up, and I also had grazes all over my labia as well, which means that there's been a lot of throbbing, shall we say. It's just, I'm pretty sure Hugh said it looked like a pack of sliced ham, which was lovely. That was before they did the stitches, by the way, if anyone's interested. Also, if you're pregnant right now, just, warn your husband to not refer to your area as a pack of sliced ham. Doesn't feel great when you're 2 days postpartum. Bless him, he meant good, meant well, I think. It's his own fault for being at the action end, to be fair. But I really didn't notice the pain at that stage. I think most of dealing with the recovery has been fear about the stitches. Also just a lack of education. I'd educated myself a lot on birth, but not a lot on recovery. I just didn't really think about it. I thought about caring for the baby, but not the recovery portion. So caring for a baby in the first few days, not really sleeping, but also trying to overcome your body being a little bit torn up. Your organs are rearranging. So if I go for a long walk now, for example, I do find it a little bit difficult to breathe just below my ribs. It's nothing you can't deal with, but it's just something to bear in mind. Or postpartum bleeding, for example, still bleeding quite heavily, and we're 10 days on. Like, that's something that I wasn't prepared for. Apparently it can last for up to a month. It's just something to be aware of so that it doesn't freak you out. It freaked me out, and I had to ring the midwife to double check that it was fine. All of these things, I think we should prepare women more for recovery and what the recovery phase really is. Like having to shower 4 or 5 times a day, having to air dry your stitches, having to take lots of laxatives and not being able to go to the bathroom, while also learning to care for a newborn, breastfeeding 8, 10, 12 times a day, learning to breastfeed, all of these things. I'm going to do a video next about the first 7 days with a newborn, but all of these things are, I think, prepare for labour, but prepare for the first 7 days, because that is the magical part, but you need to give yourself a break. You really need to give yourself a break as a woman who's just gone through childbirth, because although for me the childbirth was totally fine and a doddle, it's the aftermath, because you're living it every day, and people are asking about the baby and they're asking about how he's doing, and we ended up in hospital the day after he was born, with his temperature dropping way too low and his blood sugars way too low, and I ended up in A&E because I thought I'd lost one of my stitches, and being separated from my baby for 12 hours or so, sitting on the floor of A&E with new stitches and having given birth 24 hours earlier, that's really hard. I was in floods of tears. in A&E, actually, to the point where this old lady came over and like brought me food and was like apologizing to me. We tried to have a conversation, but I was like just crying all over the floor. I was a wreck. But don't underestimate what it is to go through labor, or what it is to go through pregnancy and suddenly not be pregnant and just have your organs all rearranged and all this sort of thing. And it's a lot. It's not a doddle. It's not like, I'm a really fit and healthy young person, and it's a lot. And I think as well, not knowing how, so in my NCT group, a huge proportion of us, like I'm going to say over 50% of our babies have been in hospital in the first week of their lives because of various issues. No one prepares you for that actually there are, like, your baby's tiny and there are things that can just not be hugely serious. Like Killian was out of hospital within about 18 hours, he was allowed home again. But that was really scary. The first time I said my son, I was checking into A&E for myself, and I said, I was basically talking to her, just explaining that my son was upstairs in the child's ward, and I realised that was the first time I was saying my son, and I just broke down. I absolutely broke down in the middle of A&E trying to talk to the receptionist. It makes me emotional thinking about it. And also, this is because in the 24 hours after labour and birth, or the 48 hours, your body goes through the biggest hormone shift it's ever been through, or any human will ever go through, and you have such a drop in hormones that you are going to cry. It just happens. I've been fine ever since, but those first 48 hours, oh my god. Watch my 7-day video, because I'm gonna do that next. I'm gonna go feed him now, but then I'm gonna film that. Anyway, if you have any more questions about the home birth experience, do let me know. I'm happy to do a Q&A. Like, the long and short of it is, I hugely recommend it. It's so safe, especially if you get a good home midwife team, which we had. So we used the Olive team at Guy's and St Thomas's. They have a really successful rate of home births. So although the national average, I think, is 45% of people who plan a home birth get a home birth, but actually they have a much higher percentage. And also a lot of that 45% is because, I don't know, women want more pain relief or something, and you end up going into hospital halfway through the home birth experience, which is also totally fine. Again, all of this is whatever is right for you. Like, ignore everybody else, ignore other people's advice. At the end of the day, you are the one going through the labour. You are the one who knows how well your body will cope. You are the one who knows how you want to experience it. You 100% take control of that. And that is why, if you're being pushed for induction, or you're being pushed for any of these things, ask for the medical reason, because 9 times out of 10 there won't be a medical reason for it, and you absolutely need to know that it is your right to refuse any care. Don't be guilted into something. Don't be guilted into being told that home birth isn't safe, which is such bull. It's such bull. People do it all over the world every single day. There's a reason that we've survived as a human race, because people were giving birth at home years before everybody was giving birth in the hospital. I'll probably leave it on that, I think. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Do drop me a note if you want to know any more about the experience. Otherwise, stick around, I guess. I'm going to be doing more videos, probably more about parenting, I think, as the year progresses. And I always say that. I always promise I'm going to do more YouTube videos, but actually this time I am, because I'm now on maternity leave, so I have more time on my hands than I do when I'm at work. Make sure you hit subscribe, or if not, do follow me on Instagram on One Slow Sunday, because I really am there every day. I always am. So yeah, thanks guys. Speak to you soon. Bye.